Well, around here we wear a lot of hats. Everybody wears a lot of hats because you're a small professional theater that doesn't have really enough money to hire everybody to do what you need done. So you hire a few people who are really good at doing many things. And so, as the artistic director, I select a season. I then cast the season. I'm usually in several shows because I was an actor long before I was a director or an artistic director, and I still love to do that. I now direct several shows that we do. And then I'm involved in budgeting and overall theater management. Sure. Well, you're always looking for what's new. Something that's new that is going to excite people, or at least new to you or to your area. Sometimes that's hard, and especially when you're a smaller theater with some limitations. We don't have a fly system. We don't have an orchestra pit. We don't necessarily have the resources to do a big dance musical. We've lately gotten into doing like one bigger musical each year. We're moving forward and trying to find new ways to do that. But so I've got to consider cast size, and you really have to take into account people are going to come to you to spend their hard-earned money, and what is it that is going to be worth them plunking down a $31 ticket cost, and so all that figures in. Well, you have to be talented. I can't hire people that are just nice people who can't pull off a great performance. In this business, though, there's a lot of people who can pull off a great performance. And so many people who are so talented and are waiting tables or driving taxis or Uber or whatever. And so you try to find those people that are not only talented, but who also are going to be good to work with. It's too small an environment to hire people that are just going to be a pain. You want people that are eager to create, eager to collaborate, and those people, along with the talent, are the ones you try to latch on to. Well, again, it comes back a little to our budgeting. We don't have a lot of money to spend, and so I always am willing to audition anybody throughout the year if they're passing through Iowa and if they call up and say, I'd love to audition. So I see a few people that way. We do general auditions in Iowa, and then for the last, probably at least decade, someone from the old Creamery has gone to UPTA, the United Professional Theater Auditions, in Memphis. It's extremely well run. The people are nice. They do well for producers. They do well for actors. And in 4 days, this past February, there were 90-some companies that were there, and you see over 800 performers in 4 days. Sure, and I always say, our audition stuff is online, but because we do so many comedies, I want to see, usually my preference is 2 contrasting monologues, at least one of them a contemporary comic piece. Because whether you're going to be in a musical or a comedy, I need to know that you can land a joke, that you can find a punchline, and that you're a reasonably amusing person. And then if they sing, I ask for 2 short, contrasting, a ballad and an up-tempo. Especially at UPTA, because they put together their package, and sometimes it may be tailored for, they may have a great voice, and I see some roles on their resume that say they can do comedy, but they did a classical dramatic piece. So I always say, can I see a contemporary comic? I've been disheartened over the last couple of years that occasionally when I ask, people will say no. And I go, what school are you going to? What school has taught you to go out into the world without a short contemporary comic monologue? Not very often, but at least one this past year and probably a couple last year. So, the bare minimum should be 4. You should have contemporary comic and dramatic and classical comic and dramatic. The first thing I did was I got a summer stock job out of the Midwest auditions that happened on the Webster campus. And it was a small company with I kind of knew what I was signing up for, but I had grown up in an Equity children's theater in Kansas City, and I was sort of used to the way Equity runs in terms of breaks. And I mean, that was from the time I was about 12. I understood the break system and what you should and shouldn't ask of people. And the summer stock experience, we got there and we went 5 weeks without a day off. And it was in rep. I mean, it was a great learning experience. It taught me a lot, but what it taught me was I didn't want to work that way. And so I went back to Kansas City immediately after that first summer out of school. And the company that I'd worked with was more than happy to hire me on for their fall tour. So I got my Equity card immediately. Now, in hindsight, I'm really lucky in terms of the path that I took with my Equity. And mainly it's because I already had a theater that I had a great relationship with who was going to continue to hire me as an Equity performer. Now, after a couple of years in Kansas City of being just an Equity performer at this children's theater, I was starting to get frustrated because I had my Equity card and there were a lot of talented people, especially with UMKC in Kansas City, who were in their grad program, who could play the roles that I could play, but they didn't have an Equity card. So they were going to be a lot cheaper to a producer who needs to use his money elsewhere. And so I bit the bullet and kept with the children's theater and kept auditioning ever so often, and a woman who was working there had worked at the old Creamery and said, oh, you should go audition for them. They would love you. So I did. I drove up on a day off up to Iowa and I auditioned, and they offered me a role then later in that season that I came in to do, and they just sort of brought me back for another show and then asked me to stay for the season, and I began to take on some of the management stuff. So, and eventually I went, this is a great theater, it serves its public, what would their other alternatives be, and what kind of security as an actor could I have here that I would never ever have in New York. Now, I did try New York briefly, in the middle there. I didn't like living in the city, and I didn't like standing in line with people who constantly were one-upping each other about their audition from yesterday, or how great their whatever was, but they also were standing in line for the same jobs I was and would say, oh, the old Creamery, I've heard of them, can you get them my resume? And I thought, I really should go back where I am much happier to live. I mean, I'm just not, I want to drive a car, I want supermarkets to have wide aisles. Well, obviously it's tough. I mean, if you kind of look around at the role model, it seems to exist that a lot of times people that are married and in theater tend to both work at the same theater. I mean, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? It's like, do you find this person that really cares about the theater where you're working and sees the good that's going on there, and they become involved and you go, wow, that's awesome, and you start to mesh with them? Or do you fall in love with somebody and they see that you're devoted to this place? I don't know, but so many small theaters, I mean, even here before, Tom Milligan and Deb Kennedy, or Tom Johnson and Meg Merkins. We've even got now a sort of a junior Creamery couple that they just got married last summer. They graduated from Millikan. They sort of did the world thing just a little, but they appreciate what we have here and the stability. And we have chosen not to have kids, which makes it infinitely easier. Trying to put kids through college, or I can't quite imagine that on an artist's salary, but some people do it, and God bless them. Well, and I do advise them all the time. Even sometimes when they don't ask, I'll say, now listen, I just want to share this with you because I do think it's important. And I also say, talk to a lot of people. But no, I was very lucky in terms of my Equity card working for me all these years. Because I am far and away the exception, not the rule. Because there are so many talented young people out there, unless you are going to be in New York, would I even say think about taking your Equity card. And now, however, we do offer what's called the EMC program, the Equity Membership Candidacy Program, which frankly gets us a lot of very talented people. People who have been other places and have done great work, but they want that next step. And the EMC is your way to get your foot in the Equity door You start down a path that lasts 50 weeks in theory, in terms of once you've worked in equity theaters for 50 weeks, you then have to become equity once an equity theater hires you. And 50 weeks sounds like a long time, but I always caution the people here, because almost every one of our interns joins the program or is a part of it. And I say, there are times when you're working backstage. I could call you an ASM, because that's kind of what you're doing, but I go, not exactly. If you really want the weeks, we'll see about using you as an ASM. But I would highly recommend that you go backstage as run crew and not take any more weeks than you have to. Because if you're on stage in a main stage adult production, you have to take the weeks. And so many people have had those 50 add up. I'm dealing with an actress this year who she's gotten where she didn't think she'd get so quickly. And now she's worried about continuing to work, and I don't blame her. It's tough. I would say certainly be open to opportunity. We meet a lot of people at UPTA, and some of them just want to be here because they see that we have an EMC card. And those are not really the people that I think are probably a good fit here. I mean, it can depend a little, but sure, you're going to want your EMC card, but we're looking for people who want to see what it's like in a professional theater from the get-go. We have experienced a lot of frustration the last couple of years, even with our own schools. Sometimes people coming into the pre-professional day of UPTA, meaning they're just graduating, and they don't check an internship as a possibility. And I go, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Now, a lot of times I think it's because programs don't explain what an internship can be. It's not that you're coming here and you're slave labor and you get no money. And, with us, you get $225 a week, plus we provide your housing, plus we give you a gym membership. Now, it is a full-time job. You can't go wait tables at the Colony Inn on top of what you're doing here, because it's usually 3 sessions a day, 6 days a week. But it's the people that want to get, and the more experience you get in all aspects of theater, the better. I'm bringing in a young lady to actually be an intern this summer, who was recommended by a colleague as a music director last fall, but she also lighting designs, and she performs. It's like, that has company member potential smacked all over it. Well, I think the thing that I've always tried to do in this setting, because we are limited in finances, but I do feel I've accomplished this based on feedback that I've gotten in terms of, I want this to be a place that people enjoy working. They love the creative process, and they love the people that they get to do it with. Because life is too short to do art with people you hate, and we don't pay enough money for you to do art you don't like, or art you're not proud of. And so in the end, I hope that people go, wow, while he was in charge of the old Creamery, it was a great place to work, and it was a place I was happy to go back to for the amount of money they could give me.